Hey everyone, welcome to the June Jira Software for Beginners course. My name's Alex, and we're going to be having a very fun time together today. If you're completely new to the wonderful world of Jira, we are going to be covering the basics, all the stuff that you got to know from a beginner's perspective to just really understand what Jira is, what it does, how you can use it, and just give you some pro tips on the utilization of the tool. Now, before we jump into it, a couple of housekeeping things in the chat. If you can just let me know where you're logging in from, that would be much appreciated. Just trying to see where are you all at, where in the world is everyone at, and just trying to understand the impact of this course at a global level. So, just in the chat, if you can just take a second here to let me know what city, what part of the world, country, continent you're logging in from, that would be great. Number two, if you have any questions at any point throughout this live stream, please feel free to utilize that same chat in YouTube and just let me know your questions. So we got Wael here logging in from Barcelona, from Spain. So welcome. Thank you very much for being here today. But yeah, if you have any questions at any point during this live stream, please feel free to drop them in the chat there. This is the June one. This is the 6th live stream that we're doing. And we might go a little off script today. So if you have any questions about anything related to Jira, even if it's not on the slides, do feel free to take advantage of the next 59 or so minutes that we have together to get those questions in there. So with that said, we are going to jump into the material. I'm going to start sharing my screen and we'll get into it. So hopefully you're all excited to be here. As I mentioned, my name's Alex. We'll cover over a little bit more details in just a minute. We have a good amount of information in the slides. The slides are not made available because I am going to be spending like maybe 5 minutes in the slides. They're just there to make sure I stay on track. Everything, and I do pretty much everything. I'll also be covering the class. We're going to be inside of Jira. So you're going to want to have Jira up and running if you want to follow along. We have Maria here from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Welcome, Maria. And then we have Rakesh here. Good evening from India. Hello, everyone. All right, so let me share my screen. Let's jump into the material and let's get started. All right, so here we are. I'm actually already in Jira, so spoilers for what's coming up. We're actually going to kick things off with a PowerPoint here. Oops, I did not update this here real quick. Let me just get this June. Oops, if I could spell June as well. June 2024. I initially had signed up for 6 of these live trainings. This is the 6th one. And I do believe I have some good news. We are going to be continuing these into the second half of 2024. And some really good news, we're going to be expanding the topics. We're going to be adding new topics, and we're going to be talking about Jira Advanced Roadmaps. So if you're interested in learning about Jira Advanced Roadmaps, make sure you come back as we are going to have a lot of fun with that one. I am preparing the material. This is coming in July, so in just 1 month. Keep an eye out for the registration for that course. You're not going to want to miss out. But yeah, we're going to be doing Jira Advanced Roadmaps. And Naomi, hello from Minnesota. And sir, please explain slowly and from the basics. I will try to go as slow as I can, Rakesh. I'm just always very excited about Jira. I get too excited sometimes. And so sometimes I forget that we have some beginners here, some people that are new, completely new. And yeah, just let me know in the chat if I'm going too fast. And you can always, this is being recorded, right? So you can always go back and rewatch a section. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I can do you right. Okay. So Jira Software for Beginners. Let's get into it. What are we going to be learning? First, we're going to talk about Jira navigation, Jira projects, how to create and edit issues, talk about the Jira boards, and then we'll go over some next steps. Now, you're staring at me going, who the heck is this guy? You may not know me. I am Alex. I have a bachelor's in computer engineering from Cal State Long Beach here in California, and I also have a master's in systems engineering from the University of Southern California, USC, right on. And I've also been in the cybersecurity space for a while. Now, my background is since 2016, I've been a Jira administrator. So I've been in the Atlassian ecosystem for quite a few years now. And most of this time has not been in the cloud. I spend a very unhealthy amount of time, about 12 to 14 hours every single day in the tool and just using Jira. And so I am an Atlassian certified professional. I wouldn't say an expert yet, but I do have the ACP 520 under my belt. And I am working on getting a couple of more ACPs in the near future. I'm just waiting for some time to open up on my schedule. Now, aside from that, I do have 2 YouTube channels. This one that you're in right now. So this is the Jira Life. Welcome. If you haven't subscribed to the Jira Life, I would urge you right now to take a second here to subscribe to this channel. And let me just give you a quick little spiel on what this channel is all about. So the Jira Life is a community-driven podcast where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, all the things happening within the Atlassian ecosystem. We typically have a guest where we jump into the deep end with our guests about, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we get to know our guests, we get to know their thoughts, comments, concerns on the Atlassian ecosystem. And so if you just are looking for a community where you can be around people that love the Atlassian tools as much as you do, then this is the podcast for you to be subscribed to. We now do have a membership. We do also have super chats enabled here. So out of the kindness of your heart, if you feel that you want to help support the Jira Life or even these live trainings, super chats is enabled in the chat, and so you can take advantage of those as well. Aside from that, I do have a different YouTube channel, Ape Tech Tutorials, with over 600 videos on how to use the Atlassian tools. And so you've probably seen my face if you've ever Googled or YouTube how to do something in Jira. And so my main channel over there is thriving. But if you haven't subscribed over there, go subscribe to that one as well, as we are trying to hit 50,000 subscribers on that side. Scan the QR code, you'll see everything else, and we'll get back to it at the end of the course. So with that said, let's just jump into Jira navigation. We are ready to really jump into this Jira tool. And so if you don't have Jira, I highly recommend you have Jira Cloud up and running, as you're going to want to follow along. Now, one little disclaimer before we get too far is that everything in this course is still very much relevant. And going forward, most of it, if not all of it, is going to be relevant, except it's going to be out of order. If you didn't attend Team 24, then you probably missed the announcement where Jira is going to be combining and merging Jira Work Management with Jira Software, and they're just going to create Jira. But with that introduction, you may have missed it from the slides on the screen, is there is going to be an update to the UI. So everything we're talking about should still be present somewhere. It's just going to be a little bit out of place when Atlassian, if and when Atlassian decides to roll out that UI. Now, they did say 2 to 3 months. We're about a month and a half in since that announcement, so we're halfway there. I haven't seen anything yet, but we'll keep you updated. All right. So with that said, we're going to take a second here, answer a question here. We got a Bree. Good day. I started using Jira recently and facing some issues on how to know who's doing the work by their story points as someone's worked on. Issue is how to know who's doing good work by their story points as. Okay, so that's a little subjective. We'll see if we can get into that, Bree. One story point task 8 in a day means he has worked on 8 story points and the other team member works on one task which has 3. So how to understand their effort. Okay. So how to utilize Jira to manage team member effort. Okay, we'll jump into that. So let's talk about the navigation, Bree, and then we're gonna jump into the project, and we'll discuss what how to measure effort in the story point. So let's get into Jira, and we'll jump in. Whoops, wrong slide. You would think I know how to use Jira by now. Okay. So here we are. This is Jira. If you've never used Jira before, this is Jira's cloud version of Jira. It looks slightly different than if you're on an on-premise version, but I'm going to walk you through real quickly in the next couple minutes on what this tool does and how it navigated. I'm going to start at the top left corner. This is usually where I like to start off, and this is what's called your apps, or I call it an app selector. And this little grid is very powerful. When you click into it, it allows you to essentially see a couple different things. Number one, it allows you to see all the different products that you and your company have purchased or have access to. And so Jira is just one of many tools. It usually comes bundled. And by bundled, I mean usually companies buy more than just one product. So they'll usually buy like Jira Service Management. They'll buy Jira Confluence. They'll buy Compass and Bitbucket and Trello, right? And so if you have access to any of those, they will show up on this list. Now, everything in this list is under this URL. So if you look at the URL at the top of your Jira, you have a site. This is what they call a site here. And this is unique. Everybody should have a unique site. Most of the time, you have access to just one site. But if you're cool, then you may have access to multiple different Jiras. And by that, I mean the URL is different sites. And so if you click on this little grid, you'll notice that I have a color squares on the left here. This allows me to change from one Jira instance to another. So as you can see, the name changes here. and the name on the URL will also change. So if you have access to a lot of different Atlassian products, you don't have to bookmark. You don't have to spend all this time bookmarking different pages or different sites or different products. Like you don't have to bookmark Confluence, you don't have to bookmark Jira Product Discovery. You could just simply use your app selector there on the top left corner and just change between the different products. So that grid is really cool. Now, the next thing is going to be the most valuable thing you'll learn in this class, in my opinion. So if you're completely new to Jira, I want to introduce you to your work. Your work is very, very important, especially when you're new, especially when you're like, oh my gosh, what is this Jira thing? Like somebody just assigned something to me. Where do I find it? How do I work on it? How do I do things with it, right? Well, your work solves that problem. What your work does is that it's like your central hub, is where you come to find the important things that are important for you, right? Your work, specifically the assigned to me that we're looking at here, it shows you anything that's assigned to you. And this is very, very critical because anything that's assigned to you means that you are on the hook. That means you're responsible for it. So you are accountable for completing that piece of work. And so if you're ever looking for it, because it's really easy to lose things in Jira, there's so many issues, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of issues. It can be really hard sometimes to find the one thing that you're responsible for. So you can always rely on your work to be there for you. And so as long as somebody assigns it, as long as the assignee, I'm going to click over here, as long as in the field, the assignee equals your name, it's going to show up over here under your work. Okay. And it's broken down by status. So you'll see all the work that you currently have in progress, all the work that's in to do, and whatever other statuses the work is in. So anything that you're responsible for shows up here. But that's not all this your work page does. That's the best part, but it's not all of it. What it also does is has your reasons. And what reasons are is anything that you're working on. So if you ever add a comment or you update the status of a ticket or you edit the description or provide a due date, or you have some interaction with a Jira issue, then Jira is going to remember the last, I don't know, what is it, 2, 4, 6, 7, about the last 7 interactions you've done in the tool. And it's going to put them right here. This is great for when you're like, something's not necessarily assigned to you, but somebody is asking you a question, or maybe you have some sort of an opinion or some information to provide to a Jira issue. Jira is going to remember those, and you can find the last 7 issues that you've worked on. Now, as I scroll a little bit farther down, Jira is also very, very nosy. And what Jira is doing here is it's going to remember the last couple of things that you've looked at. So you don't have to edit. You don't have to be the assignee. You simply need to have just opened it, clicked on it. And it's going to remember what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, the last 10 things that you've looked at. And so this is great to jog your memory in case yesterday you were working on something and you just kind of forgot, or you need to go back. It's going to remember for you, and you can come in here. Now, as you notice, it's going to remember tickets, it's going to remember the boards, and it's going to remember projects. So again, this one's a little bit more nosier. It'll also remember dashboards and filters. So a little bit nosier, but helpful if you ever forget. Now, the last thing that I will talk about in this section here is your boards. So fundamentally, there is a difference between a project and a board. A lot of people confuse the two. A lot of people say a Jira board and a Jira project are the exact same thing. And I would say like 70, 80% of the time, that is a valid statement. It is a safe-ish assumption to say that your Jira project and your Jira board are the same thing, but fundamentally they are not. I like to describe a Jira project as a house, if you think of a house, right? And I like to describe a Jira board as a room inside of that house. Now, what makes things confusing is when you create a project for the very first time, it's going to come with either a Scrum or Kanban board. You get to make these selections when you create your project, or your Jira admin does at least. And once you have that Jira board and that project, the conditions of that board explicitly say, hey, I want every issue that's in this project to show up in this board. And so it's a one-to-one relationship, and that's why people can confuse it, because to the untrained eye, they are the same thing, right? Because the board is simply overlaying and showing everything that's in that project, which is okay. But for the advanced people in the room, that's not always the case. You have the ability to manipulate what is shown in the board, and it doesn't have to be everything that's in the project. In fact, you can even add more boards, so you can create more rooms inside of that house. And so then the relationship gets a little bit more muddier. So I like to correct people and tell them that a board is not a project. So with that said, because you cannot rely on 100% fact that your board is going to be your project, this is a great place to come find the board, because unless you know which project that board is in, it might be hard to find. But if you come over here to your board section, you can put little stars, which means they're going to be bookmarked. Think of a bookmark in your browser, and they're going to be locked. They're going to be locked in here, so they'll always be in this view. But you can always see the last 3 to 4 different boards that you've been in, and you can, of course, star them or bookmark them so that they do not go away on you. So again, this is helpful in case you've ever looked or have been lost trying to find your board. This is where you go find it. So with that said, that's the navigation here on your board. The rest are not as important. Filters, projects and filters and dashboards and teams, these are important, but not as important as your work, especially for beginners. Very quickly though, your projects here. This one is any project that you have access to, they're going to show up here. So if somebody has given you the ability to see the items in that project, it's going to show up on this list. And if it doesn't show up on this list, it just means that you don't have access to that project. So you need to talk to the project owner, which may or may not be an easy thing to do, and then you can get access. So keep that in mind. The filters and dashboards, before we can talk about those two, I want to switch on over to the search over here on the right. The search is the ability to basically look for things inside of Jira. Now, search is very powerful in Jira. It's one of the best features about Jira is that since there's so much work, so many items inside of Jira, it can become very overwhelming to find things. But that search is very powerful. And now, if you are a premium user or enterprise user of Jira Cloud, you also get AI-driven search, which you can basically type in using natural language. Let me show you a quick demo here. Right? Using natural language, I can simply tell Jira, hey, find me something that I want. So I'm going to click on this view all issues over here, and I can tell Jira using AI, show me all the bugs that are assigned to me. And again, I didn't have to do any JQL. I didn't have to do anything, right? And now all of a sudden that the search is conducted. Now this is a bad search, right? But I can do are the highest priority. And again, using natural language, it's going to go and find, wow, I'm just not able to find. Show me all bugs. Let's see if we can get that, right? And Jira is going to go and find, right? It's going to go build that search for you, and it's going to return back that information without you having to know what to do in that dropdown. So if you're on premium or enterprise versions of Jira, powerful stuff here. But these searches, right? Because we have so much stuff inside of Jira, because we put so many things into Jira, so many issues, it can become really challenging to find work, because just seeing the stuff that's assigned to you, awesome. We already know how to find that. But sometimes you're looking for stuff, right? Something you just want to know. Hey, I want to know all the bugs that are priority number 1, or I want to see all the bugs, right? Show me all the bugs that are in progress. And I can go do that, and I can see that I have 1 bug that's in progress, right? And these are stuff that you're looking up, but you don't always want to do the same search over and over and over and over, because that can get really, really annoying. If you consistently have to search for the same thing over and over and over, even though we now have this natural language that makes it super easy and intuitive to search for things, this can still be annoying. But fortunately, you can save your filter. So you can save this search and just say like in progress bugs. And when you do that and I click save, I have now created a filter. And this filter is powerful because what I can do with the filter is share it with my team. And now we're all working off the same source of truth. So everybody's going to be working off the same data set, which is important. Now, you have the ability to create your own filters like I just did, or somebody else can share that filter with you, and they're going to be visible here under filters. So as you can see, you need to kind of know that search is a thing first, and then we have the filter. So if I click on any of these filters, it's automatically going to alter the query here, and it's going to show me the data that's relevant, that meets that criteria. Okay. Now, this is cool, right? I can see this. Awesome. But it's not very insightful. I'm looking at a table of data. Cool, right? Yes, well, JQL is so much easier with AI. It's one of my favorite features. It's one of my favorite things that Atlassian has pushed out. It's still a little buggy, as you saw that whole find the ones that are high priority. It added a parentheses. That's not a function. It should have done priority equals highest. So it's still not quite where it needs to be, but Atlassian is making significant investments in this. So we're getting there. Okay, so aside from the filter, right, because we have this data, because it's a table view, we can do a dashboard, and dashboards over here allow you to basically visualize that data in a more insightful manner. And so in this particular case, we're looking at all the work that's not finished, and I have it broken down by priority. So I can see all the work that's assigned to me and all the different priorities. So if I have to go and pick work, right, if I have to, like, if I come in the morning and I put my I'm ready to work hat on and I go, okay, what should I work on today? And I have 49 items assigned to me, which one of these do you think I should work on first? My eyes are immediately going to critical, because critical means like this needs to get done now. So I can click on that and I can just start working on those right away. Right. And so these are where these dashboards come really, really handy, is they allow you to make insightful decisions based on those filters and that data. That's essentially what a dashboard is. Teams, we're going to avoid. You don't need to worry about teams. Teams are a thing that Atlassian is still changing, not in scope for this training, but just ignore it for now. Plans, the same thing. This is an advanced roadmap. So I mentioned earlier that we are going to be doing in July, I think, fingers crossed, in July, we're going to be having a Jira Advanced Roadmap session. So this is for Jira Advanced Roadmap. So this is a premium and enterprise only feature. So if you don't have premium and you don't have enterprise, you're not going to see anything here, but do come back. Again, we're going to do this in July. Assets is a JSM only thing. So if you have Jira Service Management, this is only a premium Jira Service Management functionality. So again, not in scope. And then the apps you don't really care about, but just as a quick primer, apps allow you to essentially utilize third-party plugins, third-party apps that are created by different vendors in the Atlassian ecosystem, and they basically just extend the power of Jira. The gotcha with all this is that while apps do extend the power of Jira, they also extend the bill of your Jira instance. So things get a little bit more expensive as you add more and more plugins. Now, there are a good amount of free ones, but for the most part, you're going to be paying for some apps. So feel free to take a look in the Atlassian marketplace for apps, and you can kind of, I guess, learn what those are all about. Now, as we go back to the slides here, we are going to deep dive back into a project. So now that we know how to navigate Jira, let's go and learn how to navigate a Jira project, okay? And so we're going to jump into a Jira project and just talk about it. Now, before we do, I want to basically give you an overview of the different projects and the templates and all the stuff that's happening here, because what you see in this column under type is very, very important, okay? So number one, you got to understand that there's 5 different versions of Jira. 4 of them are relevant. There's a 5th one that doesn't really matter, but there's 5. There's Jira Software, which is what this course is all about. There's Jira Work Management, which is slowly going away, right? Where Atlassian, I think, has terminated the cells of Jira Work Management, and they are slowly folding in all the features and capabilities of Jira Work Management into Jira Software. So that's going away. And then we have Jira Service Management, which is for IT help desk type of situations. I like to call it an intake system. So if you're looking for for the ability to anybody to like raise requests without consuming a license, JSM is the perfect one for you. In the live trainings, I do believe we have live trainings on JSM. We have Jira Product Discovery. This is one of Atlassian's latest and newest products. It is designed for brainstorming ideas and kind of noodling on an idea before it becomes an epic or an initiative inside of Jira. And then we have Jira Align, which is not in scope at all, right? And so you can kind of see the things that I just mentioned, right? Company managed software, service management, right? And if I come down here, we have a business, which is a Jira Work Management. And I do believe somewhere in here, I have a product one as well. So when you're looking at these types, it's important for you to understand that because of the different types of Jiras that are out there, it's going to drive what these are here. Now, Sajid says, good morning, Dr. Jira. Good evening from Delhi. Question, how do you recommend people play around with enterprise and premium features? Great question. So everybody, and I do mean everybody, has the ability to get Jira Cloud for free, okay? So you can all go to Atlassian.com, right? Everybody can do this. You can go to Atlassian.com. There's a try now button over here, and you can go to Jira and you can try Jira Cloud, okay? Now, when you go in here, you can sign up. It'll for me, since I'm already in it, it's not going to show me the things, right? But you essentially sign up for Jira, use your email, whatever email you want, and you'll get Jira started, okay? Now, once you're inside of Jira and you have your free version of Jira, it is very easy for you to do a standard or premium trial, okay? If you click on standard, it's going to give you 14 days for free. And if you click on premium, it'll give you 30 days for free. And so you do have the ability to start free trials and test out all the capabilities and features without needing to put it in a credit card. Now, enterprise. Enterprise is a whole different beast. There's nothing you can do unless you actually have like a gazillion dollars and you work for an enterprise. So enterprise is really only for enterprises. Now, if you're in the Atlassian ecosystem, if you're like a champion or you have access to like, back of the room Atlassian stuff, you may be able to get a lot of the enterprise capabilities, but for the most part, enterprise is going to be something that you need to be in your business, something in your company, and you can have the enterprise capabilities there. But premium, for sure, for everybody, very accessible, 30-day free trial, no credit card required. Sajid says, gazillion dollars is what we're all here for. Yes, I wish. If anybody wants to donate, super chats are enabled and help us get to a gazillion dollars. Okay, so now that we know all the 5 different flavors of Jira, I want to dive deeper. So when we go into a project, we have the option to, and within software development, we have the option to pick a template, okay? And we have a Kanban and a Scrum. Now, Jira does include this top-level cross-team planning, product discovery, and bug tracking. I implore you, ignore all of those. And these top-level and cross-planning ones, they're cool, but they come later. You would not want to start off with one of these. This is an advanced capability. For beginners, you are really looking at Kanban or Scrum. And when you have to decide, do I want Kanban or do I want Scrum? It comes down to a very simple question. Do you want sprints or not? Because if you want the sprints, if you want story points, if you want burn down reports, then you have to go Scrum. It's the only option. But if you don't care, if you just want a board and you just want to be able to have epics and stories, but not estimating and not planning anything, then Kanban is for you. Now, because I want to show you the full breadth and power of Jira, we're going to go Scrum. Now, once you're in Scrum, you can skip this. This is not relevant. But the next thing I want to tell you is this team versus company managed, okay? So when you make a Jira project, most of the time, by default, Atlassian makes it really, really easy for you to have a team managed project. Very, very easy. Unfortunately, team managed projects are very limiting. They are designed to get you into Jira and be productive in Jira, and that's kind of where it stops. You're going to get all the bells and whistles of Jira for the most part, but it doesn't scale. It's not admin friendly, and it's not like agile at scale friendly at all. So if you're an agile team and you're going to be working with multiple teams, you do not want a team managed project. You want a company managed project, because the company managed project is the one that's going to help you scale everything. It's going to help you standardize your workflows. It's going to help you have team A and team B talk to each other and work together collaboratively. Okay. The downside is that you need an expert. You really do need somebody that knows how to be a Jira admin. Now, spoilers, I do have a Jira admin course coming up on June 20th. So if you're curious on how to use Jira admin or how to use Jira from an admin perspective, feel free to come and sign up for that class, as you'll be able to see and learn what it takes to be a Jira admin. But anyways, I always pick company managed projects because it gives you everything. It gives you Ferrari level power for the Ferrari level prices you're paying of Jira. If you have these team managed projects, they're going to be helpful, right? You'll be able to get started, but just know that they are limiting to a certain way. Now, we're just going to jump into a Jira project now, and so I can show you the insides of a Jira project and kind of help you navigate a Jira project. Now, whether a Jira project is Scrum or Kanban, you can't tell over here. It's not possible for you to know from this screen. So you do take a bit of a chance, right? So you won't know what version you're signing up for, right? But if you click into it and you're looking at the project, there's a very easy and distinctive way to know if you're in a Scrum project or a Kanban project. Because fundamentally, both, even though they're different, fundamentally they look and feel the same. There's some subtle differences, but for the most part, they are the same, okay? But the easiest way for you to know if you're in a Kanban one is when you jump into a project, you're going to see the word Kanban right here. And if you jump into a Scrum project, it's going to say active sprint. Okay, so that's really your key indicator. So if you've ever been wondering like, oh, which one am I in? Look at what it says right here for your board. It'll either say Kanban, board, or active sprint. And that'll tell you respectively which one you're in. Now, let's take a step back though, because I want to kind of walk you through what is this Jira project, right? So the Jira project, as I mentioned earlier, it's a house. It's a collector where you put all the work inside of it. How and what Jira projects you need, that's beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that is all kind of dependent on how your organization is structured. I do offer membership capabilities, right? So remember that QR code from earlier? We'll cover the QR code in 30 minutes here. But if you need extra help, if you need some hands-on help, I do have some membership and a la carte options that you can buy so that you can spend some quality time with me, or maybe in reverse, where I can spend some quality time with you to help you out with your Jira problem. So that is an option. That's QR code from the beginning. Definitely scan it so you can see those offerings. So if you need a little extra help. But assuming you're like, hey, I got my project, what do I do now? Well, let's talk about this Scrum project, okay? And again, fundamentally, the Kanban, very similar. So what I'm going to cover here is going to basically be the same thing for Kanban, so it doesn't matter too much. But in Scrum, what do we see? So first of all, we're going to see the project name, okay? This is good. The other thing that we're going to see is we're going to see what kind of project it is. Remember that service, product, work management, right? Software. The software one's the important one. This confirms that we are in the right type of project, okay? And then we have this planning section, and I can actually collapse and expand these items, right? And so when I look at planning, this is going to expose two things. It's going to expose my board, which is powerful. We're going to talk about the board a lot. And then it exposes these goals, issues, and components, okay? We're going to cover that a little bit later. But in the board, as I mentioned, out of the box, the board and the project are basically the same thing, unless you go in and change it, which you can't, right? Which is why I don't like to make the assumption that they're the same thing, because technically they're not, okay? But the board is unique. The board is really your gateway into Jira. The board is really where you do most of the work, okay? And within the board, we have something called a timeline, a backlog, an active sprint, and a report. These four things will change. What's inside of them will change based on which board you're in. So if your boards have different filter criteria that show or are told to show different data, the timeline, the backlog, the active sprint, and the reports are going to update to reflect the data that is within that board. Sai says, how to choose a template, either Scrum or Kanban. So when you're creating a project, and this might not be something you do if you don't have admin rights, but when you click on projects up here and you click on create project, you're going to pick software. I didn't mention this before, but this is a very important thing for you to know. Software development here is the only template. If you click at all these over here, software development is the only one that is going to give you the ability to pick Scrum or Kanban. Okay, you will not see Scrum or Kanban anywhere else. Once you pick software development, then you pick it from here, Sai. So you either pick Kanban if you want Kanban, or you pick Scrum if you want Scrum. And that's where you make your selection, okay? Great question. Okay, so now that we have this here, right? So now that we have the board and we know that we have these four items, we have this timeline. So this timeline is interesting. I like starting off with the timeline because I am a top-down thinker. So if you approach your problems from the top down, if you have like an architecture or you have requirements, you have something big, right? This is a great view for you to see at a glance, like kind of like in the Lion King when he's like, wherever the light touches, this is our kingdom type of thing. Like very similar to this, right? So the timeline gives you like this perched up view where you can see everything. You can see all the important things in your project, right? And it starts at the epic. It starts at creating your epics here. So I like this view because it's going to help me create epics and then I can create stories. Okay. And most importantly, not only can I just create epics, but it lets me visualize the plan. It lets me visualize when my sprints are. So I have dates for sprints, as you can see here. It helps me visualize when my releases are going to be, these milestones. And it helps me put dates for my epic. So I can move my dates around. I can extend the due date and the start date of an epic. And it's really powerful from that perspective. Additionally, I mentioned it earlier, right? I can create stories as well. So for a particular epic, I can create children. I can just click on this little plus button here and I can create a story 3, right? And very easily, this story is now associated with that epic. And if depending on the settings that I set, I can also put the dates on these stories as well. And so it's a very easy way for you to visualize the dates, the start and the end date for your stories, the start and the end date for your epics. I can, in fact, even connect epics together and establish dependencies between epics, or maybe even within stories to stories or stories to epics. So, very visual way of planning out your work, right? And I like this view because again, it forces you to think big and then get into the details because most people are usually in the details and then they're lost in the details because there's just so much noise happening, right? And so I love this view because it gives you a good bird's eye view of how and when your work should be done. Okay. That's the timeline. Now, all the stories that you create, as you can see here, I'm going to expand my epics, right? So as I have stories that are created in this view, only those stories move over to my backlog because in Jira, we work off of stories, tasks, and bugs. Epics are technically visible, but they're hidden. They're here where it says epic. You have to click on epic and you have to show the pane here. So you have to slide the slider and it will show you your epics on the side. But epics at this point are just a grouping. They're there to kind of like put your stories in a container or bucketize your stories so that you can group them logically. That's what the epic is really there for, right? But you don't execute the epics. You don't strategically work on the epics. That's only for the story. So when it comes time to planning your sprint or planning your work in a Scrum board, stories, tasks, and bugs, those three, and technically subtasks, are the 3 to 4 items that you're primarily going to be working with. Now, if you're in a Kanban board, those rules need not apply. It'll show you everything. And so it's a little bit looser, but Jira tries to stick a little bit closer to the principles and the methods of Scrum. And this is how we're achieving that inside of here. Okay. So what do we got going on here? So let me complete the sprint because I did not want to do that. I wanted to move everything to the backlog. So everybody close your eyes for 1 second. I'm going to move things to the top of the backlog here real quick. Okay. And so once we're inside of this backlog view, the backlog view is powerful, right? It's what allows us to be tactical. It allows us to go from planning, right? So in the timeline, it's all about planning and strategy, right? You're being strategic, you're planning workout, you're trying to figure out what's the big picture look like, right? Why are we here? When the backlog, it's less on why and more on what. So now you're going away from strategy and planning and you're going into tactic and execution. We're getting ready to actually do something, right? And in Scrum, we get ready by planning out a sprint. And so this is our sprint view here. And so right now I have an empty sprint and I can create a sprint by clicking this create sprint button here. And if you don't have that button, if you don't see a create sprint button, then that means that you just don't have the manage sprint permission. You got to talk to Jira admin to help you out there. Now, fundamentally, there's a lot that happens here. I do have another course called Jira for Scrum Masters. We'll talk about this in a few minutes here, but again, this QR code, folks, we're skipping ahead a little bit, right? But this QR code, if you want to take your skills to the next level, scan that QR code on Udemy. In the month of June, I'm dropping 3 classes. We'll talk about it here in 20 minutes, but 3 classes that are going to be available for you. A more in-depth version of this course, it's going to be like 6 hours or something like that. I'm working on it. It's almost ready, right? Going to be in Udemy. A Jira administrators for beginners. So if you are new to being a Jira admin and you're like, how do I change a workflow? How do I add a new field? That course is going to be for you. And a third course that I'm dropping again in the month of June is going to be Jira Software for Scrum Masters. So in that Jira Software, I give you the tactics on like how do you strategically prioritize and plan your work, right? And so for Bree up here, when they were asking, how do we utilize those items? Like how do we utilize our story points, right? Well, that's really a Scrum Master thing, right? So not Jira Software for beginners type of thing. But for all intents and purposes, for what you care about, this is what's happening most of the time under the hood, right? Because as a Jira Software, fundamentally, I get an issue assigned to me and I just need to work on it, right? And so we'll cover that in the next 10 minutes or so. But there's a lot that happens under the hood, and that's for your Scrum Masters. Now, this unfortunately is not a Scrum Master course. So again, we won't go over all those details. We have a question for the backlog. Is the backlog unique for each sprint release within a sprint, or is the backlog a master log of items for multiple sprints? Yes. So great question. It's the latter. It's the backlog is the list of all the work, all of the stuff that needs to happen. You create sprints. So I can create multiple sprints here. So you can see I have sprint 3, sprint 4. I can create sprint 5, right? You can have multiple sprints and you can have multiple, I don't think that you have releases. You do, right? And I can create multiple releases, and the releases and the sprints, all it is a label. It's just a sticker you put on an issue to identify which sprint and which release it belongs to. And so you don't want separate projects for each release or for each sprint. I've seen that happen many times where people will go and create literally a brand new Jira project per sprint or per release. You don't want to do that. A Jira project is long living. It is designed to last a very long time, and you can do multiple versions and multiple sprints within a single project and even within a single backlog. Okay. Again, you might be interested in taking my Jira for Scrum Masters because we go into a lot more detail into these things. Okay. Now, the last thing that I want to show you then, right? So I'm going to collapse these sprints here. And so again, your Scrum Master, what usually happens is your Scrum Master is going to grab stories from your backlog and they're going to move them into your sprint just like this. Okay. Now, Bree had a question earlier, right? And it's a really hard question to answer because I started using Jira recently and I'm facing some Jira issues, right? So the question is, who do you know who's doing good work based on your story points or not? And fundamentally, to answer this question, you really need to have a good understanding of what story points mean to you. And so I will show you a little tip, a little trick here so that you can kind of understand how to leverage this a little bit better so that it makes more sense. Okay. So first of all, as a given, you need to put story points, right? So if you want to track progress based off a story point, you need to put story points into your stories. If you don't, then you're kind of dead on arrival. You need to put that. Okay. Second, you should assign your stories. Now, if you're a pro agile person, you're probably going like, what the heck, Alex? That's the worst advice I've ever heard in my life. Maybe, but watch what happens when I assign my stories. Okay. When I put an assignee into my stories, I get these 3 dots right here. And these 3 dots are important because when I click on them, I can see now a breakdown. I can see the workload, capacity, resource management, if you will, of each user. And I can see how many story points they have assigned to them. This is critical, right? Because now I can see how many points each person has, right? And so going back to Bree's question, right? There was another part here where I have 1 story point, 8 tasks in a day means that he's worked on 8 story points, and another team member worked on 1 task, which is 3. So how do you understand their different effort, right? So first, you got to be able to see the points. That's step 1. But step 2, and this is what I charge people a lot of money for, right? So I'll give it to you all for free here. But again, if you need more help, you probably want to consult with an expert. There's people like Release Team, people like myself. I can help you out, right? But if I go over to my Miro board here, I'm going to show you something real quick. I have this little thing that I show, right? So this is very critical. You need to do something like this. You need to have like a table that shows what each point represents. So this is what I usually evangelize to my teams, but this is how you can tell, right? So if your team has, if somebody's working on a story that's worth 3 points and somebody's working on one that's worth 8 points and they finished an 8-pointer, well, naturally they finished a week worth of work, right? So the more points, obviously the heavier the story is, right? And this is not a measure of good work. I think this is probably where your bigger problem is, Bree, is that you're not measuring good work. Good work is very subjective, but you can see the weight of the work using the story points. Okay. And so I would recommend you have a good table like this to kind of explain what each number means so that when you're looking back over here, you can go, oh boy, Alana has like an entire week's worth of work or an entire sprint, like 2 weeks worth of work, and Alex has like a week or less, right? So if I had like story points, like half a week, right? And so this is important for you to have a good basic understanding so you can do this a little bit more effectively. Okay. So going back to this training here. So once your Scrum Master can remember, this is a Scrum Master thing. This is not usually Jira users. Your Scrum Masters are the ones that are planning your sprints. They'll put on all the points. They'll do all the assignments. You hit start sprint. You put in the dates. Again, your Scrum Master will usually do that. You hit start. And then we have the board. So now we're automatically in the active sprint. And now we see something. And so now your job, the easiest thing I can tell you is that for you to use Jira, all you got to do is for anything that's assigned to you, you just come in here and you update the status. You move it to in progress and you move it to done. That's it. That's literally fundamentally all you got to worry about from a Jira perspective. So it's easy, right? So all you got to do is go to your work, find out what's assigned to you, or if you know the board, go to the board, and then whatever's assigned to you, you grab your story. When you start working on it, right? When you create your branch or when you create that first commit, you move it to in progress. Then you're going through the motions of maybe you're writing your code, right? You just pull that branch, you start coding it up. Or even if it's not code related, right? You just started working on it, right? Well, then whatever you're doing there, then you move it to done when you're done. And it's simple, right? It's very, very intuitive. These columns, though, are customizable. Again, Jira admin training. I keep saying I sound like a little sales pitch here, right? But these are not things for Jira beginners, right? These creating workflows and creating columns is really a Jira admin thing, right? And so I encourage you to come back on June 20th and take the Jira admin and or keep an eye out on my Udemy because I am going to have like a, I don't know, it's going to be like 6 to 8 hours training for how to be a Jira admin for beginners. So you'll definitely want to be checking that course on Udemy when it drops. And again, if you need any help, we'll cover this at the end, right? But I do have like a buy me coffee. You can go. I'll show you guys what that looks like at the end. But anyways, fundamentally, that's it. So you just need to make sure that you and your team are moving your stories from left to right. Now, in order for you to get credit, and this kind of goes back to Bree's question at the beginning, in order for you to get credit for work being completed, it needs to make it to the farthest right column. Notice that I didn't say the done status. That hopefully is the case where the farthest right column is your done status. But for the most part, if you want credit for something, it needs to make it to the farthest right column. And hopefully your farthest right column is your done status, but that is not always the case. But anyways, you know that you got credit for one of two reasons. One, things get crossed out. That's one indicator, but not the only indicator. The biggest and most important indicator is that it's in the farthest right column. But I want you to keep this in mind. If you do not want a story to go from one sprint to the next, it needs to be crossed out. So if you are not seeing your stories be crossed out, you need to talk to your Jira admin because something is wrong with your Jira configuration. Specifically, something is wrong with your workflow, and you're going to want to work on that workflow and get it fixed. Okay. So that in a nutshell is how you use Jira. So that is literally all you need to worry about. Anything you're responsible for, move it from the left to the right. Now, as we go over to reports, These are going to be, again, Scrum Master things, but there's a lot of reports in here that kind of show you progress. So I'll pull this one up for Bree's benefit here, right? But when you're looking at your burn down report, this also kind of shows you how your team is progressing. As your team, when you start your sprint, it's going to timestamp it, and it's going to tell you how many total story points you brought in for that sprint. Then, as your team moves things to done, you're going to get what's called a burn down credit. And it's going to take that story point from that story, and it's going to burn you down. It's going to, the red line here is going to go down by the number of story points that got finished. So, Bree, going back to your initial question, right? Like, Jira is designed more from a team perspective, right? This is a team effort, not so much an individual contributor's effort, right? Like, Jira's not gonna go, hey, Jimmy got this credit and Billy didn't get the credit, right? Like, that's less important. What's important is that as a team between Billy and Jimmy, they both finished it, right? The whole team crosses the finish line. It doesn't make sense, right? Like, it's kind of like rowing a boat, right? You're trying to measure who's paddling faster or better, but you're in a boat together paddling. So if you have one person like paddling a lot, you're going to start spinning in a circle. This needs to be a team unified effort. You all need to row together to get to the finish line together, because it's not enough for Billy to jump out of the boat and swim to the finish line. That's not the point. That's not the purpose of all this, right? You're all in this boat together, and you all have to work together to get to the finish line together, right? So it's not a one person is outperforming the rest, right? So we go back over here to this question. We don't want to, right? We don't want to understand their effort. We want to understand the whole team's effort, right? So just some food for thought, right? Because your mileage is going to vary if you try to look at just individual performance. Because as you can see, the metrics in Jira are for a team. So anyways, there's a lot of reports here. You can take a look at all of them. The burn down is the one I use a lot. But again, all of these are really going to be designed for your Scrum Masters. There's not you as a Jira user aren't going to spend a whole lot of time here on looking at these. Goals is something new. Goals is something that Atlassian is kind of pushing heavily. This is something that's not quite ready for prime time, in my opinion. It's connected with Atlas, and it's still not something that I'm ready to talk about. I think I still need to do a little bit more discovery. But if you can use Atlas, it's going to be a powerful thing. But I'm waiting until Jira divorces from Atlas and just makes it part of the Jira project. So we're waiting for that next iteration. I do want to talk about issues though. So earlier at the beginning, you saw me do the search, right? And so one of the things that you're going to be doing in Jira is you're going to be looking for stuff. You're going to be doing a lot of searches. And so you could click up here. You could click on the search up here and find things. Or in the project itself, there's an issues button up here. And you can come in here and the AI button is ready for you right here. So if you are a premium or enterprise subscriber, you'll see that AI button there. But what's really important is that there's this basic view here. And the basic view allows you to, within this project, so this is what's the difference between the search up here and the search inside of issues, is that the project is pre-selected for you. If you go to the search up here and you click on view all issues, it's going to be all the issues, all of them from every project that you have access to, right? And you click on issues over here on the left, it's going to be all the issues in this project. And then you can fine tune. Then you can say, hey, just show me the epics, right? Maybe show me all the epics that are assigned to me, right? And so this is how you start really fine tuning that search and searching only for the things that you care about. But once you do have a search that is important for you, right? So maybe you want due date, right? Maybe you want to see all the epics that are overdue, right? And so if I hit that, it's gonna go. If I click on it, click update, right? It's gonna find every epic that's overdue. So if I click into this one, you can see that the due date is May 31st. This is June 4th. So this epic is indeed overdue. And so you can do these fine tunes, and then you can of course save the filters. You can share the filters, and that's pretty much it. The last thing I'll talk about is that there is a concept of project pages. And so Jira and Confluence are tied together very well. So if you connect your Confluence to your Jira project, you can create Jira You can create Confluence pages from within Jira, and you can see Confluence pages that are already created inside of Jira. So it's a really good handshake that happens there. Now, with that said, we're going to, one last thing I want to show you, right? There's this big create button. Wow, I almost forgot the most important part. So how do we create work? How do we create things and put them into Jira? Well, you click on this create button, you pick the project, you pick the type of issue you want to create, and then you give it a title. Summary equals title. This is my great story. Then any field that has a little red star, you have to fill it out. So as you can see, summary has it, issue type has it, and project has it, but the rest don't. So if it doesn't have it, that's it. That's all you got to do. Click create, and that story will not be created. It's going to be in your backlog, and it's going to be at the bottom of your backlog right here. And then everything else that I described, it all applies. So that's how easy it is to create and put things into Jira. So with that said, let's just wrap up here. If you are ready to take your skills to the next level, again, scan that QR code. First thing you should be doing though is follow me on LinkedIn. Drop me a note. I get a lot of requests. In fact, I have like 400 outstanding requests. But drop me a follow on LinkedIn, and tell me that you took the course so that I know to accept you. Subscribe to Ape Tech. Again, 600 plus videos on how to use Jira. Go subscribe to that one. Subscribe to this channel. If you haven't subscribed to the Jira Life yet, again, I urge you to subscribe. I also urge you, we have about 50 videos from the last year on interviews from and just conversations about the Atlassian ecosystem. We are trying to get to 4,000 hours so that we can enable AdSense on our channel. So if you want to help us get there, watch all those videos so we can rack up some hours and help us get to our goal. I do have some other free courses on Salto. Again, everything's in that QR code. And then take your learning to the next level. This specific course, if you are a Jira beginner and you want to go more in depth and you want a better breakdown at a more leisurely pace and a more in depth, more context, more information, I have a full 5-hour course. I am updating it this week. It's going to be closer to 6 hours, maybe 7 hours. It's still not fully done, but definitely check that out. I'm going to have courses on Teachable as well that are going to be more hands-on. And then eventually, I am going to have some instructor-led courses. And then finally, I do have a merch store. So check those out. And then the last thing I want to show you is that I do have a Buy Me Coffee here. So if you are interested, let me see if I can get to it from my, not LinkedIn, but Linktree, right? So I do have a membership capability, right? So if you want to just sponsor the channel, there's a $5 way to do it. There's a membership if you just want to, extras if you want to come over here and you want some help, right? So if you want a consultation, if you just have a quick Jira question, I have some options for you. If you want me to just come in and like make a discovery call with you and figure out like, hey, what are my problems? Well, all these are here in the extra. So definitely go check those out. Again, that QR code is going to bring you over to the Linktree, which is then going to bring you over to the Buy Me Coffee. And so check out the memberships, check out the extras, drop the super chats, and that's pretty much it. We are done for now. I don't know if this course is coming back in July, but for sure we're going to have the Jira Advanced Roadmaps coming in July. So make sure you keep an eye out. Make sure you follow me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest happenings. That's it for this class. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.